Coming up on Market to Market, lawmakers assess the impact of persistent drought in the West. And we'll soar into the wild blue yonder to examine the role of drones in agriculture. Those stories and market analysis with Tomm Pfitzenmaier next.
Funding for Market to Market is provided by Grinnell Mutual. You think differently about a customer when you stand in the middle of his dreams. We work to make sure you get covered right. Grinnell Mutual, a policy of working together. Information on finding an agent near you is available at grinnellmutual.com. This is the Friday, June 5 edition of Market to Market, the weekly journal of rural America.
Hello, I'm Mike Pearson. A key government report Friday revealed that after slumping in the first quarter of 2015, the U.S. economy is getting its mojo back. According to the Labor Department, U.S. employers expanded their payrolls by 280,000 positions in May. However, the national unemployment rate ticked up 0.1 of a point to 5.5%. Why? Because hundreds of thousands more people began looking for work. Average wages rose only 2.3% from a year earlier. Now, that's barely above inflation, but appears to be encouraging more people to enter the job market. Despite solid job growth, Wall Street headed south as the trade seems to be more concerned that continued economic improvement will probably lead the Fed to raise interest rates. Out west, though, the big issue these days is persistent drought. And as Mark Twain once said, whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting. This week, urban and rural interests told federal lawmakers to put up their dukes. Western drought took center stage this week at a Senate subcommittee hearing on the opposite coast, where 57% of the region is experiencing moderate to severe drought. Lawmakers asked the panel of state and federal officials coping with arid conditions from Mexico to Canada what is working and what needs attention. Some of the region has been locked in drought for the past 15 years. Agriculture's consumption of water in California is said by many to be as much as 80% of the precious resource. But the Golden State's Department of Water Resources breaks down the use to 10% urban, 40% agriculture, and the balance for environmental management of wetlands, delta outflow, wild and scenic designations, and in-stream flow.
To be managing water more efficiently
Senate Energy Committee Chair Lisa Murkowski says that California farmers have some difficult choices ahead.
These farmers have contracts with reclamation in the state, but today, in the absence of water, their livelihoods are being dramatically impacted. Drought is leaving behind hard decisions for these folks, decisions where they're saying, which fields do they lay fallow? Do they change the certain crops that they plant? Do they plow under crops, such as fruit trees?
But the long tail on this issue was also under the microscope as well during the hearing.
It's very important to me that we look at responding to the long-term changes that are before us and the ways that we do business in managing water in the midst of this major crisis. And that we think about the paradigm shift that is in front of us as we face these warmer seasons. We need to develop 21st century strategies for water management that not only respond to the drought conditions of today, but prepare us for an uncertain future. This requires new ways of thinking and collaboration, which means exploring all options, not just incremental change at this point in time.
Low levels in Lakes Powell and Meade have a ripple effect on those dependent on the supply for everything from drinking water to hydroelectric power generation. And Arizona officials are looking for alternatives to quench their thirst for what is rapidly becoming a valuable commodity in the West.
Lower basin states, including Arizona, are help funding weather modification, cloud seeding in the upper basin to try to increase the flows there. We also are looking at potential desalination of brackish groundwater within our state.
If you can't create water from the sky, that leaves only so much of the precious resource to go around.
Water conservation is not going to create a new supply for a new demand, but it certainly can lead to saving water, be able to putting that in storage, maintaining flexibility in the situation.
In the past 2 years, California officials have made mandatory cuts of as much as 36% in water consumption. Dozens of farmers in the nation's top agricultural state are trying to meet voluntary water conservation targets. The growers submitted a proposal Monday to plant less thirsty crops and leave some fields fallow due to what seems to be a never-ending drought. The plan calls for idling up to 25% of their land and implementing other strategies to achieve the necessary savings. Some Golden State producers are already trying to keep efficiencies high in their operation.
Well, California, because of the regulatory climate, we use every resource as carefully as we absolutely can. So we have an incentive just based on our cost of production to always use things as carefully as possible. We've installed drip irrigation on over 60% of our farm. So I think it's important, as you mentioned, not only to look at the very large projects, but also find ways to incentivize local efforts and work in collaboration with the Bureau and the federal agencies to help that along.
And as fire season approaches, tinder dry conditions will not only give fuel to wildfires, but cause problems after the smoke has cleared.
So after the wildfire, erosion and runoff you get from soil going to the streams creates huge water quality problems. It greatly increases the turbidity in the streams and raises the treatment costs for those cities who take that water out of those streams further downstream. That's one of the issues. It also chokes our reservoirs with silt, and those reservoirs will rapidly fill up and lose more of their capacity over the long term. So we'll lose storage long term as well. So that's one of the other big issues that the fires create.
The Federal Aviation Administration announced this week that it will hire a new senior advisor to sort out what it calls an absolute crush of private sector interest in unmanned aircraft systems, more commonly known as drones. The FAA is trying to establish its final regulations for the devices by the start of 2017. But hobbyists aren't waiting on the feds. In fact, the flying machines are taking off in agriculture, and it seems the only thing higher than innovators' hopes are the drones themselves. Josh Bittner explains.
The forward march of UAVs, or unmanned aerial vehicles, is creating a buzz in rural America. In fact, early adopters and newcomers alike predict drones will be as common as tractors on farms of the future. And with cheap technology blossoming, producers looking to hack the field are already employing the machines as a key weapon in a precision agriculture arsenal.
It's just another thing to give the grower control.
I think it's important that everybody in the room understands I don't sell ships, never sold ships. You cannot hire me to fly. No one has ever done that. People have hired me to speak, okay, several people. But what I talk about is what you can do with this technology. So let's dive right into this.
With a background in aviation and farming, Chad Colby is a tireless promoter of UAVs, extolling the benefits agricultural operations can reap by employing an eye in the sky.
Do you know right now out west, people are putting thermal cameras on this, flying over their livestock and determining whether any of their livestock has an illness right now, has a fever? I mean, that's what's happening right now. I mean, and it exists. It's not super expensive either.
Illinois-based 360 Yield Center is looking for ways to maximize every grain of potential on farms. As UAVs fly over crops capturing multispectral images with modified cameras, computers on the ground digitally stitch the images into an agronomic tapestry, and the different infrared wavelengths offer crucial information about plant health.
It's when you go to the NDVI enhanced photo that now you can really start to pick out the differences of what's going on there.
Normalized Difference Vegetation Index, or NDVI imagery, allows producers to make timely, corrective, cost-saving prescriptions regarding nitrogen, pesticides, herbicides, and water application at any time of the growing season.
Today is the best yielding corn that this farm has ever raised, ever. And I mean ever. And it's due to a lot of great management, and we've put in a sub-drip irrigation system that's taken this farm to places it's never been before.
While drones of various capabilities wait on case-by-case government approval for commercial operation, it is the culmination of several innovative applications that may elevate precision agriculture to new heights.
I would classify this as a very efficient system.
By working both sides of the equation, with robots in the air and irrigation below ground, agronomists can funnel resources to where they are needed most.
We're using drones and soil scans and different things to sense what's out there in the field. And then we come back and we utilize this tool. Because this is always underground, we can apply at any time. We don't have to throw it on before the crop because we're putting it in that root zone.
A 2013 report by the Association for Unmanned Vehicle Systems International reveals the UAV industry will add over 100,000 jobs and $82 billion to the U.S. economy over the next decade. And while those figures are disputed by some, few expect the steady rise of autonomous vehicles to subside.
Integrating unmanned aircraft into our airspace is a very, very big job, and it's one that we at the FAA are determined to get right.
The Federal Aviation Administration, which holds ultimate jurisdiction over the wild blue yonder within U.S. borders, was given a congressional order in 2012 to formulate rules to fuse drones safely into America's skies. Most farm flights, if not done by research institutions or federally approved test sites, are conducted by hobbyists over private property below 400 feet. Critics say the FAA's sluggish timeline has allowed drone innovation to flourish overseas while sputtering domestically. But the agency did unveil proposed regulations early this year, followed by a public comment period. And several voices weighed in on the government's recommendations, among them the American Farm Bureau, who wrote, "Employing UAS in precision agriculture could save farmers and ranchers significant time and resources, and by extension, all consumers of agricultural products." Last month, authorities granted first approval for a drone large enough to carry a payload, according to Yamaha Corporation. The helicopter-style R-Max is expected to spray fertilizers and pesticides in California vineyards. The UAV has been used by rice farmers in Japan for years.
The average farm in Japan is 1.5 hectares, which is 3.7 acres in the United States, and that's the size of a house lot. That's not on a farm.
Advocates for agricultural aviators, particularly those who roll, twist, and turn at low altitudes, are skeptical of the forecast for unmanned systems. The very nature of their work could put them in close proximity, so crop dusters are following the issue of drone assimilation intently. But some don't see the R-Max as much competition.
It's a matter of physics. The downwash is directly proportional to the weight of the aircraft. So that 40-pound UAV or 100-pound UAV, the downwash compared with my airplane, I'm certified at 9,000 pounds. That's 4.5 tons. I've got more downwash. I'm always going to have more downwash than that little thing, which means I get better coverage all the way to the ground under the leaves. That's not possible with these small units.
There is no crystal ball to show how the future will unfold for drones in agriculture. But as a budding industry spreads its wings ahead of finalized FAA rules, some on the bleeding edge see patience as a virtue.
I think at the end of the day, it's like everything else. You can fly this equipment halfway and do a halfway job, or you can fly it with the responsibility that goes with it.
For Market to Market, I'm Josh Bittner.
Next, the Market to Market report.
Grain prices rallied this week as wheat recovered all of last week's losses. For the week, July wheat gained 40 cents, while the nearby corn contract moved 9 cents higher. Soybeans also rallied, albeit more modestly, as the July contract advanced by 4 cents. Nearby meal prices, however, bucked the bullish trend with a loss of 80 cents per ton. In the softs, July cotton lost 34 cents per hundredweight. Over in the dairy parlor, June Class 3 milk futures rose 20 cents. In the livestock sector, prices moved lower as the August cattle contract lost 70 cents. Nearby feeders declined by more than $1, and the July lean hog contract gave up $2.33. In the currency markets, the euro gained 1 basis point against a volatile U.S. dollar. Crude oil lost $1.17 per barrel. COMEX gold declined by more than $20 per ounce, And the Goldman Sachs Commodity Index lost just over 5 points to settle at 435.20. Here now to lend us his insight on these and other trends is one of our regular market analysts, Tomm Pfitzenmaier. Tom, welcome back.
Thanks, Mike.
Big week again in the wheat market. Huge move to the upside. We've been in this 50 to 60 cent range in the wheat market. Is that going to stay the case?
You mean stay in the trading range?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. I think you're going to have those little pops up like we had last week on weather concerns, and we still haven't really started winter wheat harvest yet, so there's a lot of uncertainty about, what the yields are actually going to be, how much, this wet weather in those southern areas and the impact that's going to have. So there's some uncertainty that could once again take wheat back in that 5.25, 5.30 range. I think you get up there and you have to be a seller again.
There's just globally not much of a higher price than that available.
That's right. I mean, there's plenty of wheat in the world, and they're going to buy some from us and a lot from other people. And I just think the upside's pretty limited. And I mean, you got a lot of corn too. So I mean, there's grain, all kinds of grains available,
and still a very strong U.S. dollar.
Right.
And it looks like that's going to stay the case for a little while.
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of a wild week this week, but I think overall that's exactly what's going to happen.
All right. Well, now as we talk about the corn market, we do have a question here from one of our viewers. He asked us this on Twitter. We encourage all of you to send in questions to us at Market to Market on Twitter or on Facebook. And this is from Jay in Mason City, and he's curious, should I unload last year's corn or plan on eating it for a long time? We had a dime move this week. Time to get out of the old crop corn market.
Well, you got a couple of problems. Well, number one is you got a huge crop probably coming at us. Number two, all your neighbors have got a lot of corn sitting in the bin too. And at some point, not everybody, but a lot of people are going to decide to start unloading some corn. So you've up to this point have had a relatively good basis because farmer selling hasn't been very tight. I'm fearful that if you sit on this, you're not only going to have at risk the potential for price to go down, but that basis to go against you and also. So I think by holding you got sort of two guns pointed at your head, and which one's going to go off first is really the question. I think the sooner you can sell it, the better. And like you said in the introduction here, we had a nice up in corn, so you got a little chance to do a little better this week.
You don't see this up this week continuing into next week? Is there any indication that we'll see continued strength?
Oh, I wouldn't say that. I mean, yeah. When I say sell, I mean if you want to wait for a nickel or a dime, that certainly could happen. I'm just saying I don't see the huge move up from these levels, and maybe you can milk a little in and scale up, sell, or do something to take advantage of a move like that if it happens. And there is some concern about, as of last Sunday, there was about 4.5 million acres that weren't planted yet. If you looked at the planting progress number, Missouri was way behind, and they grow a fair amount of crop, particularly last year had a great crop. So I think there's some of those things sort of lurking around, and obviously their growing season's a little longer, so their window of opportunity is wider. But I guess I think it's all going to get planted, and what is planted is really in awfully good shape. So you're really fighting.
So selling new crop corn in at these levels as well?
I would. I mean, if you're scared to death that that's an awful idea, then buy yourself a cheap call to protect on the upside. But I think anywhere here between 380 and 395 is where I'd scale up making some new crop sales.
Okay. Now talking the bean market, had a little bit of stability, a little bit move up this week. Indication that we found some buyers at these price levels, or is this just a step on the tread downward?
I think it was the same thing you saw in corn and beans. Is you got a market that was very oversold. The funds have a heavy short position. All of a sudden, there's it's a little bit wet, and this is wrong, that's wrong. Let's cover some of that. Let's put a little weather premium back in, and that's what we did this week. I mean, what'd you say? November beans were up 4 cents or something. I mean, that's not exactly a huge run up. It was just a correction in a market that was a bit oversold. We've got a crop condition rating report for the first time coming out on beans Monday afternoon. Expectations are that that's going to be the good to excellent category in the 70 to 74% range. We got good subsoil. We got some heat coming in next week. It's about about as good as you could ask for most places.
On this new crop bean, is there any concern that all of this rain is going to keep some bean acres out, maybe bring that record planted acreage down a little bit?
Sure. I mean, that's one of the things that's sort of circulating in the market. I think that's why we're at, 920 or so rather than 820. I mean, there's some of that uncertainty factored in the market, I believe.
Now, as we look out to next week, we've got the USDA supply and demand estimates coming out. Are you anticipating anything on there to be a market mover one way or the other?
With a good, excellent category in corn, I think you could see them bump the yield in corn just a little bit. We've been selling beans, old crop beans, fairly well. I guess I wouldn't be surprised to see them bump that bean export number a little bit. Now, on the corn side, as far as demand goes, ethanol efficiencies have been way better than they thought. So at some point, it just doesn't take as many bushels to get a gallon of ethanol as we thought it. So there could be some tweaking on that, although I doubt if they'll do it this week. And then there's the feed issue. What's the impact of this bird flu and the bird liquidation bin? There could be some minor demand adjustments. I don't really expect anything too significant.
Probably not a limit move one way or the other on the info. Now let's talk this cotton crop. Cotton prices down a little bit this week, but where do you think they're going from here?
Oh, I don't think they're going anywhere. I think they're just going to chop and go sideways. I mean, Chinese demand for U.S. cotton is way off, and I understand there's been a lot of problems in Texas, and that gave us a little run up earlier, but that's been sort of taken back out of the market. Again, you get little $2, $3, $4, $5 pops. Uses to make sales on. Other than that, I don't think cotton's going anywhere.
That mid-60s is probably going to be the high end.
Yeah.
All right. Now, looking at the livestock markets, we did see a downtrend this week. Looking at the live cattle, 70 cents off on this week, cash relatively steady. Where does this look to you next week?
That's the dilemma in that market, is you got this cash market trading at 160 plus. You got June futures at 154, 55 maybe. So everybody's just sitting around seeing how that's going to get resolved. You had a little letdown after the Memorial Day in terms of demand for beef, but beef demand overall has held in very well, I think. So if you're looking at a futures position, I think you sell in that 154 plus range. It gets down to 149, 150. You cover it or don't do anything and ride it along. It seems to me the numbers are tight enough. You're probably going to continue to see the live market stay fairly well supported here.
Would you look out longer term, given that we're still at historically very high prices, and make some deferred sales out into the end of fourth quarter, first quarter 2016 on this live market?
I would do that on these rallies up to the upper end of the range, but I wouldn't do it with futures. I'd do it with some sort of an option strategy, because with that cash market sitting up there, the numbers as tight as they are, there's always an opportunity for some up move. And I guess I wouldn't want to lock myself in to something that specific. I want to leave some flexibility in there in whatever marketing plan I had.
Keep it loose.
Yeah.
Now, a feeder cattle market down $1 on that dime rise in corn. Is that what drove that market down a little bit?
Oh, I think so. I mean, you certainly can't blame it on the fat market, because overall it was fairly stout this week. So I think that's really a function of corn and good pasture conditions too have helped support that market. Again, the feeder's up in that 120 and 122 range. That's probably going to be kind of tough to get through.
You don't see us heading back to 246?
I'm not saying it can't, but I'd be surprised.
Okay. Now,
I mean, you got cheaper, if you have substantially cheaper corn, and the futures go up toward where the cash is at, some optimism could come into that market. So, I mean, you can never say never. I'm just saying, if not much changes, that's probably about all you can expect.
All right. Now, as we look down at the hog market, down 233 this week, it looks like we're taking some premium out of that hog market. Is that bird flu's passing, so we're selling hogs? Is that what's happening?
That market topped out. I mean, you had a, $10, $12 run up on the pork market. You continue to have the dollar working higher. That's not helping any. So I just think that 84, 85 range is about the upper limit of what hogs can handle, given the numbers we've got, weights, demand, all that. Yeah, you refer to the chicken. What you'd think when you hear, well, they're liquidating chickens everywhere, that you go, holy smoly, they're going to have chicken prices through the roof. And the fact that hasn't happened for a couple of reasons. One is it hasn't affected the broiler industry. Number two, you have all these people that import our chicken that are freaking out and saying, "No, well, I'm not going to buy that chicken," and so you got all this chicken backing up into the U.S. So the reality is it hasn't helped chicken prices that much, and you got all that product competing against pork, which is going to be a headwind for the pork industry too.
All right. Now, the egg market's a different story. That's
totally different.
That is going crazy.
It is.
Now, we had an OPEC meeting this week. The governors, or whatever you call those guys on the OPEC board, met, had a release. Crude oil didn't do much this week. Are we at this $60 range, do you think, for the foreseeable future?
Probably. They've decided to hold steady. The Russians have said they're not going to cut production. U.S. production was up at record 46-year highs this week, so you've had almost 1,000 drill rigs shut down, and we still haven't shut down U.S. production. Now, everybody, the big shots in the oil industry say, "Oh, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming," and you'd think it will be, but it hasn't yet. Plus, we've got all the storage that was filled up with oil, when it was in abundance 2 or 3 months ago. That's all sitting out there over the market. So the upside's pretty limited. And if this production doesn't cut back, then I think you see it slide back into the mid to lower 50s. But
mid to lower 50s, and if OPEC absolutely changes nothing, it's a $10 range we could be looking at.
Yeah, they've got the money, and I don't see them cutting back.
All right. So crude, so farmers, still chance to maybe lock in some of those fall diesel this far out?
Yeah, you can. I don't know that there's any big hurry to get that done.
All right. Well, Tomm Pfitzenmaier, thanks for taking the time to join us this week.
Thanks, Mike.
That wraps up this edition of Market to Market. But Tom and I will continue our discussion and answer some of your questions in our Market Plus segment online. You'll also find audio podcasts as well as streaming video of our program exclusively at the Market to Market website. And be sure to join us next week when we'll examine the impact of USDA's latest supply and demand estimates. So until then, thanks for watching. I'm Mike Pearson. Have a great week.
Market to Market is a production of Iowa Public Television, which is solely responsible for its content. Funding for Market to Market is provided by Grinnell Mutual. You think differently about a customer when you stand in the middle of his dreams. We work to make sure you get covered right. Grinnell Mutual, a policy of working together. Information on finding an agent near you is available at grinnellmutual.com.